Well, good afternoon. Come on, good afternoon. Do we need to stand up and stretch and all that good stuff? Jacob, you did an amazing job. Fantastic. Thank you so much. It was very, very inspiring. Now, Kara said that I'm a 3-time CHRO, which sounds like I should be in prison someplace. Either that or just a little bit crazy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a little bit of an insight into me before I change slides. And the reason I'm going to do that is so that you won't think I'm absolutely crazy about what I say, because I wouldn't want to get that reputation. It would not be consistent with what Kara just said about me. So what I will tell you is that I was incredibly fortunate to grow up at PepsiCo and at Frito-Lay back in the 1980s and 1990s. And the reason that I was incredibly fortunate is that I learned that business is a full contact sport. You're either going to win or you're going to come in second place. And what I also learned is that driving great business results is a function of having great teams in place. So full contact sport, great business results, great teams. And we as an HR function really have an opportunity to operate as we go forward in this new environment in that space. Now, I took what I learned at PepsiCo and I became that 3-time CHRO, most recently at Macy's, where I was responsible for driving a very significant transformation of the HR function. Kara and Tony and the team from Oracle were unbelievable partners, could not have done it without you, really seriously. It was really, really hard. And we could not have done it without Oracle. Prior to that, I was a CHRO at the A.P. Møller-Mærsk Group in Copenhagen, Denmark. No, they don't speak Dutch there. But a fantastic place, tremendous time to be there because there was a huge business transformation and a huge cultural transformation. What did that look like? What it looked like as a business transformation is 7 of the 8 business units, by the time I left, delivered top quartile profitability in their industry space. 7 of 8, up from 1 of 8. And people had fun doing it. We all had fun doing it. Our engagement scores went from 60% favorable to 76 favorable over a 5-year period. So people, we all love to win. Everybody loved to win. And then I was the first-time CHRO, the first CHRO in history at Atlas Air, which was a really, really interesting role. Now, I'm in my post-corporate career, which I'm enjoying very, very much. And I'm involved in a number of things, as Kara has said. Private equity world, where private equity has figured out that building great organizations results in improved cash flow, results in great returns on their investments. I'm a senior advisor to the HR Policy Association, one of the finest professional organizations I've ever heard of, and the senior advisor to the Health Transformation Alliance. So that's what I've been up to. I've been extraordinarily fortunate to work with some really great people in my career. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you a little bit about what I think is coming. There's a lot of change coming. Now, what does this change look like? Well, Jason Jennings says, it's not the big that eat the small, it's the fast that eat the slow. So if you think about full contact sport, great business results, and strong teams, what we have to get prepared for is doing it at extreme velocity, because the fast will eat the slow, I guarantee you. And I'd rather be the fast than the slow. But why is that? Well, this one right here is the first wave. I was at Macy's. What do you think this thing did to the market cap of Macy's? Wasn't good. Got there, the share price was 40, went up to 72. I left, it was at 45, and bottomed out at 19, is rebounding. So this is an incredible disruptor, an absolutely incredible disruptor. And if you move slow, you die. There's an even bigger wave coming, and it has been discussed here this afternoon with AI and machine learning and everything else that is coming along with it. So what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about a couple of things. First of all, what do we as HR leaders need to do differently, in my opinion, as we go forward? And then, what are the conversations we need to have with our executives, with our business leaders? Because the competition today is fast, and sometimes it's even big and fast. So what do we have to do to prepare for that eventuality, which is coming very, very rapidly? Let's start with us. I mean, we, and I'm going to shrink up here, are the cobbler's kids. We take care of everybody else. And then we look at ourselves and say, geez, we did a great job of taking care of everybody else, but what about our own capability? And we say, we'll get to it. And then it doesn't happen. And it puts us in a position where we as a function are disadvantaged. So I think there's 5 things, the bottom 2 being absolutely foundational, that we need to get much, much better at. First of all, we have to be data-driven. I had a boss who wasn't an American, who spoke English, but his native language was Danish. So you'll understand that piece of context when I tell you this story. He said, Bill, the language of business is not English. And I'm thinking, what the hell does he think it is, Danish? No, not quite. There's 5 million people that speak Danish. And then he said something very, very interesting. He said, the language of business is data and numbers. And if you can't speak the language of business, you can't be a business person. And we have an opportunity as a function to be better in speaking the language of business. We simply do. Now, let me give you a practical application of that. When I was at Maersk, we had a business, a $2 billion business, a relatively small one, and a $60 billion business, where we looked at talent, we looked at engagement, and we looked at the performance of our oil drilling rigs. And the talent plus the engagement was empirically tied to the difference in performance on uptime and safety across 26 drilling rigs. So having that kind of insight, you might imagine, would be very, very powerful. Each of our organizations, with our help, can have that kind of insight. But it's an area that we need to do better at. And it is extraordinarily powerful when we get there. Secondly, being more proactive. I had a director at one of my companies, and I won't say the company, but he and I were having a conversation a couple weeks ago, and he said, I sit on 4 boards. 2 companies are in trouble. They have activists who want a board seat. And guess what the most conservative function in the company is? It's HR. So if you don't have an HR function that is a change agent, it is a sure sign that your company is in trouble. So we as a function that doesn't apply to all companies, but too many it does, where the HR function is hanging on to the status quo and just hoping things get better. We have an opportunity to do better in that regard. Faster and focused. Now, I'm probably not the only one in this room who's been in an HR function where there's a long list of things to do and everything is created equally. What I've learned in private equity is that anything you do has got to tie back to the investment thesis that creates value for your investors. So in HR, what are the things that we do that drive the greatest value? And then how do we harvest them as quickly as possible? So in this regard, I'd submit to you that if we broke down leader experience and employee experience and applied it against HR and what we do to impact those two things, and then put agile development methodology against it, there would be a huge win there. So what is it that we do that adds value, and how can we get to 50% better, 75% better, 90% better very fast? Because otherwise, we're just going to end up, like Jacob said, that was my Danish, by the way, Jacob is going to be in a position where we're not going to be able to make that kind of impact. These next two are foundational. And Tony, this is not a commercial for Oracle, but it's a simple fact. We have got to get much more tech savvy as HR functions. 3-time CHRO, every time that I joined the company, we were last in line for capital to implement technology changes. In fact, we weren't even last in line. We were like, there was the end of the line, and then there was us over here. I think some other people have been in that position. And you never get what you need if you're way over here, 50% behind the last in line. But we simply have to move up to the middle of the line. We don't have to be at the front of the line necessarily, but we have to be at the middle of the line. And then we have to embrace technology. At one of my companies, which a few of you know well, I'd talk to my HR executives and they'd say, we're a high-touch HR function. We want our employees demand face-to-face everything. Which if you talk to my 26 and 24-year-old millennials, they'd prefer not to talk to anybody face-to-face. But technology is extraordinarily important in this regard. And oh, by the way, number 1, number 2, and number 3, we will never get there unless we get the right technology in place. And then the last piece is right here. I would submit to you that the US labor markets are the most heavily regulated sector of the economy in the United States. You think about that. There's nuclear power. What we do is more regulated than nuclear power. There's an awful lot out there that we have to deal with. But if we can get to the point where our mindset is all about working at the intersection of creating great organizations where people want to come to work, have a great experience, and want to win, and producing outstanding financial results for our shareholders, then we will unleash the power of human resources. So what are the conversations we need to have with our business leaders? I think with the change coming at velocity, there are three things. One of them is, what does it mean to be a leader? What does it really mean to be a leader in our organization, in your organization, in any organization? And this is not something that is theoretical or academic or anything like that. It is something that is very, very real. And the reason it's very real and very important is because as leaders behave, the rest of the organization takes their cue. And if you have a bad leader, then it's okay to be bad. And if you have a great leader, then it's inspiring to be great. When I was growing up at PepsiCo, our CEO, Wayne Calloway, said, what I want in our executives is, and Wayne was an accountant, so it's going to sound boring as daylights. I want executive maturity. That is great business results that bring people along for the ride and don't cut any corners. Jack Welch talked about what he wanted in his leaders. He says, I want energy. I want edge, which is the ability to take a problem apart and put it back together in a much better way and do it quickly. And I want I want leaders who energize the rest of the organization. And Jeff Bezos says, I want one thing in my organization. I want this organization to be a day one organization. Anybody remember the first day of school in first grade? Or ninth grade? Or the first day at work? What is that feeling of the first day, and how do you recreate that multiples of times? Secondly, are we organized to win? Organizing to win is really about two things. Some of my CHRO friends aren't going to appreciate me saying this. Corporate headquarters do a great job at destroying value. They do a fantastic job at destroying value, completely unintentionally. You have a lot of really smart people with a performance appraisal that they've got to fill out, whether they have it or not. And they do a great job of creating things for other people to do. So when you think about what's really, really important that comes out of your corporate functions, well, there's strategy, there's allocation of talent, there's allocation of capital, there's managing performance, there's communicating internally and externally. And if you can get to an operating cadence that simplifies that and makes it predictable, then you're in a fantastic place because everybody knows what to expect and you don't spend a lot of time doing things that don't matter. The second thing is to have an organization structure that is lean, transparent, relevant, and focused. Lean in that it's not too big, transparent, it's not a black box, relevant to the rest of the organization, and focused on delivering value. You're able to do that, it's a fantastic thing. When I was at Maersk, we had 400 people in corporate headquarters. We said there's only 5 things that we can do to add value. There's 25 things that we're doing that are destroying value. So with 200 people, we did 5 things that added value and stopped doing the other 25. And finally, what are the most important roles? This is all about talent. As you think about the 30 most important leadership roles in your organization, do you have the best players in the industry in those roles? And if not, what are you going to do about it? Because again, this is a full contact sport at velocity. And to get speed, you've got to have the best people in the most important roles. And in addition to that, what are the roles that create competitive advantage? Probably be a lot of disagreement in the organization about this, but the roles that create competitive advantage are the ones that you have to have specific talent strategies for. What is that at a Macy's these days? It's data scientists. It's not merchants anymore. They're important. Finance people are important. HR people are important. They're all important. So finally, the sky's the limit if we get it right. It's a fantastic experience, and you can look forward to 3 things. Number 1, an organization that wins. Number 2, the ability to look back at the end of your career and say, we did some pretty special things. And number 3, a platform to develop the HR leaders of the future, like the previous generation did for us. Thank you very much. I'll be around for the next day and a half. Would love to chat with you. Take care.